Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank y'all for being with us for this fourth general meeting of Train Towards Freedom. We're really getting the ball rolling in terms of being able to consistently meet with y'all every Sunday at 8 EST. So we appreciate y'all being here. We're going to do a quick round of check-ins. We have this global arms industry video we'll go about and we'll go over. We have some discussion questions after the video, and then we'll just kind of use that discussion to facilitate the meeting. So in terms of check-ins, let's just do name, pronouns, and 30 seconds of how your week was. So I'm Jabir. Pronouns are they, he. Any pronouns if I'm comfortable enough with you. How my week was, just trench work. Really just crossing T's and dotting I's like always. It's a boring thing to be an organizer, but it's what you got to do. Well, let's go down the list. So we'll go as far as I can see it. So we'll go with Comrade Loss. Name, pronoun, and how was your week?
All right. My name is Camrad Loss, or Alice is. I typically use Loss for this. Let me just quick get this changed here just so that's available and visible. I use they, them pronouns, and it's been an all right week. You know, it's a week of doing what we have to do and learning a lot and taking, you know, just doing our best to do what is right by, you know, the people in our life right now. And that's about it. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Comrade. Comrade.
Hi, my name's Comrade, she, her. You know, kind of similar to everybody else. You know, just been doing all the little grunt work. Pretty tired. Telling Comrade Jabir earlier, our winter just started, like officially, like a couple of days ago. So we just got our first big snow. So it's very dreary and quiet. We're pushing through some of that like seasonal exhaustion.
Yeah, we all feeling it. It's about to be the same here in the Midwest. Thank you, Comrade. Emma.
Hi, my name's Emma. Pronouns are she, they. My week was a bit of a roller coaster. I had about 3 days front loaded with a lot of emotional stuff to deal with. And then luckily I was kind of able to turn that around. And then since Thursday, been doing a lot better on that end. Yeah, been taking care of myself. So that feels
excellent. Good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear things are on the up and up for you. Yeah. And last but never least, Comrade Mark, who is going to be a big supporter for our organization.
Hey, comrades. Good to see everybody. My name is Mark. Pronouns are he, him. My week has been a little touch and go. I feel like something that comrades here could probably relate to is like that feeling of it's like we're doing the day-to-day stuff that we have to do to stay alive, but
yeah,
what's happening in Palestine is just like always there, and it feels surreal. You know, there's something that kind of feels disembodied about the way things have been going, and just the fact that like what feels like quote unquote normal life is supposed to just somehow continue as a so I've been dealing with that, but obviously it's amazing that there are other people that are putting the time in and putting the effort in, and just kind of doing the tedious and all of the work that's going to have to get done moving forward. So it's definitely great to see everybody and glad to be here.
Thank you, Comrade, so much. That was a great round of introductions. Appreciate y'all. So we are going to transition soon to the global arms industry, who's selling and who's buying video. One thing before we watch the video, though, Emma and Mark, if y'all could pull up a notepad, and we'll take maybe about a minute. Each of y'all pull up a notepad. I want you, without Googling, to write down who you believe are the top 3 weapons manufacturer countries in terms of exports in the world, and we'll see if your guesses match up with what the reality ends up being. So we obviously know the answer. Lose myself and Comrade, so we won't participate in this part with y'all in terms of guessing. But yeah, 3 countries who lead in weapons manufacturing exports. Take about another 30 seconds to write down your 3 guesses, and then we'll start the video from there.
It might be even good to also write down who you think is the largest buyer of the global weapons trade. So that is also addressed in the video.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead and do that too. Who you think are the buyers? I actually didn't catch that part of the video, so I think I will take a part in making that guess. Let's see. All right, go ahead, Comrade Lose. Everybody pay attention to Comrade Lose's screen. They're going to go ahead and stream this 13-minute global arms video for us. Thank you, Comrade.
Industry. Yep, today, the global arms industry. Yep, today we're going to talk about the nations and companies that produce big boats, big guns, fighter jets, and everything in between. You see, with nearly $2 trillion being spent on militaries around the world in 2019, it's important to remember that all those sophisticated systems and weaponry used in the hundreds of military bases around the world cost the taxpayer big bucks. But who are the big players in this often controversial global industry, and just how influential is it? Well, in order to really get a better understanding of what we're dealing with when we talk about the global arms industry, we've got to start with some context. Welcome to the global arms industry. So let's start off by defining what we mean by the global arms industry. The global arms industry is the industry in which manufacturers sell weapons and military technology across national borders. Pretty simple, right? Well, what's to be noted is that an arms industry is usually part of a national or sometimes international military-industrial complex. And this is when things get interesting. You see, a military-industrial complex is the relationship between a nation's military and its defense industry, which often receives public contracts to produce the fancy boom-boom machines that only see the light of day for fancy parades or military exercises. By far the most well-known military-industrial complex out there is that of the United States. In fact, in the case of the US, it is sometimes referred to as the military-industrial congressional complex, acknowledging the US Congress as a third pillar that sustains its multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, these military-industrial complexes are important to be aware of when looking at the global arms industry, because these complexes have slowly been becoming more international in their presence. Meaning any foreign entity could yield more power today over a nation's policymakers, given the lobbying power and general entanglement between a nation's policymakers and its military-industrial complex. And with military technology and weaponry being significantly more complex today than they were 150 years ago, many smaller nations have had to turn to a relatively small group of countries and companies in order to get their dose of cybersecurity technology and big nuclear-powered ships that might as well be considered as their own micronations when out at sea. So, with the role of the military-industrial complex being outlined, let's now dive into what the global arms industry looks like today. Just how large is it? And is business booming? $1.917 trillion. This is how much money is spent globally on militaries. It's larger than the GDP of Russia, and it's truly an extremely high figure. In fact, this number represents a 3.6% increase on the previous year and equates to 2.2% of global GDP. However, although this is the figure often thrown around when comparing one nation's military to another, a nation's military expenditure does not necessarily point to a nation's arms industry being amongst the most innovative and impressive in the world. Just remember that Saudi Arabia has outspent the UK for multiple years, but you'll have a hard time looking for a Saudi arms company that competes with the British-based systems. So, in terms of measuring a nation's arms industry, one's military expenditure is not a great set of data to use. But recognizing that global military expenditure has nearly doubled since the late 1990s, it's fair to say that much of this additional spending will have been translated into more arms sales. This increase in the last 25 years has been down to a load of geopolitical factors, such as the fact that spending in the late 1990s was relatively low to begin with, given that the Cold War had recently finished and the Soviet Union was no more. Also, the US's war on terror got going in the 2000s, and of course the rise of China's economy, which enabled the Chinese military budget to bloom. Of course, there are a lot of other additional reasons, and if geopolitics is your thing, then you should totally be watching Caspian Report. Anyway, the figure of more importance to us is that of global arms sales. And from this graph, we can see that global arms sales have been steadily rising over the last 15 years. And data for 2019 show that the 25 largest arms companies have seen an 8.5% increase in sales on 2018 data, indicating that the industry at a global level is currently experiencing healthy growth. But I'm sure you're wondering now, who are the big players in this global industry? Which countries are selling and which companies are behind these arms and technology sales? So here's a little guessing game. Which 3 countries do you think are the largest exporters of arms globally between the years 2015 and 2019? You can pause the video if you want to write down your guess. Okay.
That should be the guesses that y'all wrote down.
Should I guess now?
Yeah, go ahead. What were your 3 guesses?
Sure, yeah.
U.S., U.K., France.
Okay, U.S., U.K., France. Those are not awful guesses at all. What about you, Emma?
I put U.S., Russia, and Germany.
U.S., Russia, and Germany. Those are really fantastic guesses. Let's see.
Germany.
Let's see how close it lines up to reality.
All right.
I'm sure most of you thought that the USA would be in the top 3, and you'd be right. The USA is by far the world's largest exporter of arms, responsible for 36% of global sales. Perhaps some of you would have said that China would be after the US, and this time you'd be wrong. The Chinese don't actually make the top 3. Instead, they rank 5th, representing 5.5% of global sales. In fact, here's a look at the top 15 countries by arms exports.
Did somebody say U.S., Russia, France? No, somebody said U.S., Russia, UK.
France.
Huh?
I said U.S., UK, France.
U.S., UK.
I had U.S., Russia, Germany.
Well,
Okay,
Dang, that was close.
so all the answers were in combinations of these answers. That's what it sounds like.
I will not lie. I did change kind of during the introduction of the video, and I did have France in my top 3, and then I kicked them out to add in Russia.
Damn.
So
you were really close though, because Germany is 4th.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
We got
every nation named here is in the top 10. So.
And yeah. And
Actually, every nation named here is in the top 6. So there you go.
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well done, y'all. Well done. And let us continue. There will be one more moment where we pause, but that's like the second question that we asked.
Exactly. Go ahead.
All right.
As you can see, most exports originate from Europe and the USA, which isn't a huge surprise. But you probably didn't expect almost 85% of exports to come from these 2 regions. And to better understand the direction of certain nations on this list, here's the percentage change in sales on the previous 5-year period. As you can see, some nations like France, Israel, and South Korea have seen pretty large increases, whereas Ukraine, Sweden, and to a lesser extent Russia and the UK have reduced their arms exports. Now, some of you may be wondering why this data includes a period of 5 years, as opposed to just a single year. And the answer to that question is pretty simple. You see, when it comes to the global arms industry, purchases between countries can fluctuate significantly from year to year. A country may purchase 10 fighter jets in 1 year, only then not to make another large purchase for another 4 years. So, in order to reduce how skewed this data can be, the norm is to group the data into sets of 5 years. But having said that, it still results in data like this from Portugal, whose exports increased 1,239% on the previous 5-year period, with 95% of those exports going to Romania. So it shouldn't take a genius to figure out what happened there. But moving on, let's now have a look at which companies are responsible for the production of these arms. Taking a look at the top 15 list, we can see that the arms industry is dominated by US manufacturers, with Lockheed Martin, the company responsible for the F-35 fighter jet, this bad boy right here, being the most active manufacturer in the industry, with half of the company's annual sales going to the US Department of Defense. Noticeable European manufacturers are BAE Systems, Leonardo, and Airbus, whose sales combined don't match that of Lockheed Martin's. Another major player present among the top 15 are these 3 Chinese firms, which may seem a little surprising to see on the list, given that we saw that China exports fewer in arms sales than France and Germany. But when we consider that the weaponry and technology aren't necessarily exported overseas, it makes much more sense. Perhaps there are 2 companies among this top 15 that don't strike you initially as arms manufacturers. Airbus and Boeing are the 2 largest players in the aviation industry, and all their innovation and research flying large tubes of metal above the ground comes in handy for defense ministries across the world. In fact, of Boeing's total revenue in 2019, 44% was classed as revenue that derived from its defense operations, a significantly larger share than in Europe's Airbus. But okay, we can see that Europe and the US dominate the production of military-grade weapons and technology, with China also joining the party. But where are all those weapons that aren't kept within a nation's borders ending up? Which nations are driving up demand for international arms transfers? So let's have another guessing game. Which nations do you think are the largest importers in the global arms industry? Pause the video to write down your top 3.
I didn't do 3. I was thinking Saudi Arabia, Israel.
And maybe the US.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Biggest exporter and importer. Why not?
And what about you, Emma?
My top 3 is kind of weird. I have Isn't Real as the top. I have France second, and the UK third. So
I can actually see the vision there, though. I can see the vision.
just essentially, if I could write NATO, that would be it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think my 3 are going to be Isn't Real, Germany, and Russia. So let's see.
Okay, the top 3 are Saudi Arabia, India, and Egypt. These 3 nations are responsible for over a quarter of global arms imports in the 2015-2019 period. If we extend the list a bit further, we'll find Australia, China, Algeria, and South Korea. These nations are a complete mix from an economic standpoint. We have highly developed economies, resource-rich economies, and relatively weak economies. However, importing arms is a geopolitical dance. Nations are willing to spend extra on their militaries, purchasing products from certain countries if it means that they have preferential treatment in other aspects of geopolitical life. For example, Saudi Arabia, the largest spender, is supplied mainly by the United States of America and has ramped up its arms imports by an impressive 130% from the previous 5-year period. Or take South Korea, who have a vast industrial capacity at home, but share a strategically important alliance with the USA, and had 55% of their imports come from Uncle Sam. The decision to purchase military technology from a certain country can be a matter that has as much to do with the defense ministry's needs as it does with an economic or political favor for an ally. One nation that has really put its foot on the gas pedal is Qatar, who has seen a 631% increase in its arms exports, meaning the small nation of 3 million people purchased more than the 110 times more populous United States of America. An interesting fact to take from this set of data is that among the 40 largest importers of arms, the USA is the top supplier for 23 of them. And in the cases of Japan, Taiwan, and Morocco, the USA provides north of 90% of their arms imports, a very dominant share, which only reinforces the claim that the global arms industry is a US-dominated industry. There you go. The USA takes the crown as the nation most responsible for the production and sales of weaponry across the globe. Whether that's to be celebrated or not is a whole other thing. But what it definitely does mean, though, is that much of the most sophisticated military technology remains within the hands of the US arms manufacturers. But despite all these figures and facts regarding the production of weaponry across the globe, there's one last fact that I'll leave you with that will help you understand just how large the global arms industry really is. And that is, even if you combine the world's top 15 largest arms-producing companies, their total defense sales would still be lower than that of Toyota or Volkswagen, and marginally higher than Apple's, which reminds us that the world's real manufacturing titans are those that solve problems like getting humans from point A to point B and bringing people together through telecommunications rather than creating human-killing machines.
Excellent. Thank y'all for watching that presentation with us. So we got some discussion questions to share with y'all. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So, first question. Besides weapons manufacturers, Mark, what's an industry you can name that's a part of the military-industrial complex?
In an indirect sense, the media, mass media industry. I would count within the military-industrial complex. Other industries, even certain consumer products. Let me think more on that one as well.
I had one. Fossil fuels, the gasoline industry. I can only imagine how much fuel they're burning through to fly those planes, transport fucking tanks, transport the munitions, all that jazz.
We're training towards freedom. It won't be guesswork eventually. We'll know exactly how much oil is going into that stuff eventually. Inshallah. Thank you, comrades. How about you, Comrade? What's an industry associated with the military-industrial complex that's not weapons manufacturers that you often think of?
Yeah, no, it's funny that the guy who made the video, ended it with that little fun fact about, the weapons industry being bringing not quite as much as the automotive industry or the telecommunications industry, which I include both in the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, geez. It's almost as if he just gave us a little layup there, isn't it? Yeah. Interesting. And last but not least, Comrade Luz, what's one you think of?
I mean, sometimes this is directly part of the military-industrial complex, but I mean, since it is definitely relevant to our work, like the tech industry as a part of the military-industrial complex, because they do make weapons, but they also make GPS and other kinds of systems that help make the military industrial complex function in general.
That's a good answer. Thank you, Comrade. Here's possibly a big break answer for y'all, but how about as a military industrial complex aid, the fucking the Red Cross, the American Red Cross,
Absolutely.
And how they go and they do what we could call mutual aid imperialism, in terms of how they go and interact in countries. And it's not just them. It's organizations like Human Rights Campaign. It's organizations like Feed the Children. It's organizations. It's a lot of organizations, And it's not just exported too. It's also imported. It's organizations like Susan B. Komen. Or Susan G. Komen rather. It's a lot. So look into the Red Cross. It's not pretty stuff. Okay. Starting with Mark. which nation from among the top 10 weapons exporters surprises you the most?
I'm actually drawing a blank on those.
Yeah, can we pull that back up for reference, please? So we got these top 10 pulled up again. So we got the USA, Russia, France, Germany, China, UK, Spain. What is that down there that those words are covering? Israel, Italy, and South Korea. There's really only one here that sounds kind of surprising, I guess, right? In terms of the top 10. Just
What's
South
the
Korea.
surprising one for you?
Just South Korea, right? Like I think I would have more or less thought about the rest of these countries, just historical progression wise. Because like in China's case, they're trying to rise up and challenge to be the superpower. And then in the rest of these countries' cases, they have varying histories of like colonialism, using like the arms industry as like a negotiating tactic to be able to like extort resources from like in these countries. And like every single one of these countries like has that kind of history in terms of the European ones, plus Israel.
I think why South Korea surprised me so much is them being like de facto occupied by the United States. It's like I didn't know they were going to be even making money off of those arms deals, and the United States not just taking them.
Exactly.
In a similar vein, I guess South Korea surprised me because I thought they might be higher up as like a importer.
Exactly. That's where I would have thought they showed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they were, right? I think they were high up on the
They were
list.
Probably.
Right.
So
I think they were like the
surprised that
top
they're also
five.
an exporter.
Yeah, I think they were in the top 5. Main suppliers of South Korean arms imports for the U.S. Could you oh yeah, you're looking for that chart. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Number 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what the fuck? Like, you're importing weapons, you're exporting weapons. Like, what are they even exporting? What natural resources are over in the South? And like, what are they making over there that they are exporting to be top 15 in exports? I guess that's something to research and come with some fun facts for next week. I'm kind of curious about that.
We got some fun facts about India being up there as the largest importer because we know where they get most of their weapons.
Why don't you fill us in?
Straight from Israel. They are the number 1 importer of Israeli weapons in the world.
Wow, no, that is a fun fact. Did not know that, or not so fun fact in the case of the colonized Palestinians. So, last but not least, in terms of our questions, in terms of the presentation of the video, starting with you, Mark, what is one thing you would change? But please don't limit yourself to one. If you change several things.
Definitely a very sterilized view of imperialism itself.
Mm-hmm.
The way the video was presented.
It's a understatement.
Yeah, and just like, I mean, there was language that was used throughout that video that made the presenter's bias very clear in terms of like referring to robust military economies as healthy. It's like,
yeah, they sounded like something like
that really the word we want to use to describe. So there was moments like that, and then the whole thing of like whether or not this is something that should be celebrated is a whole other question. And it's like, well, obviously that's how like the whole kind of feigned objectivity of a lot of modern journalism, where it's just like by pretending that there is some question to be asked here whether this is a good thing or not. It's definitely it gives you that kind of liberal bourgeois analysis, but as something where we're all critical people here, it's a good compilation of facts and stats and numbers, so I definitely appreciate it on that level. But it is the type of thing that, like, for me, I would want to see us synthesizing that information with the actual critical theoretical framework and putting that out to people, as opposed to giving them this video and saying, hey, here's some info on the military industrial complex, knowing that it has all of these flaws that I'm sure we're all well aware of.
Damn. Is he sounding like the Train Towards Leadership team, or Train Towards Freedom leadership team, or not? Because I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure we made that exact same point when we watched this bullshit. Like that exact same point. Thank you, comrade. Thank you. Yeah, no, because I mean it's like you said. I think you already said it perfectly. It's sterilizing imperialism and it's sterilizing the military industrial complex, and it's watering it down. Emma, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, and actually this is perfect because just like piggybacking off of that, the way like the aesthetics of the video is like, why am I seeing a Top Gun cuts in between talking about arms deals? Like, why am I not seeing what the arms are doing? Why am I not seeing the death and destruction that this brings? Like, why am I seeing the cool Call of Duty? What is this? Like, it's sterilization of imperialism and war, and like, yeah,
Exactly.
it just I always like to like the point of sorry to cut you off, but just like for Westerners, especially in America, just like how much war is a spectator sport for us, and just how much we've been separated from the humanity of like what's actually going on.
Exactly,
sorry,
like or the reality of it. No,
exactly.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. So, if you were going to work on this video, had you what's the change you would prioritize making the most? How would you improve the presentation of this video?
Well, I guess honestly you have to start at the script. I think you would have to start with something that kind of, you know, like Mark and y'all were saying, of just like that gives a realistic picture of what's actually happening and not just transactionally, but like the material real world repercussions.
That is so
Start there
put.
and then you can back it up with the evidence that is everywhere. So
absolutely. Thank you, comrade. Did you want to say anything on this, comrade?
I would probably especially when talking about it like as a, you know, we talk about the global arms industry, but it really isn't, you know, we aren't talking about the global arms industry, because, you know, we're talking about the imperial core arms industry. And so the way that it like kind of put other nations on the same, you know, like it made clear that, you know, the United States was the largest producer of these arms, the largest exporter of these arms, that like China's reasoning for it is completely different than America's reasoning for it. Russia's reasoning for it is completely different than America's reasoning for it. So like kind of going into the dialectics of why a country might be investing more in its military now than its past, other than simply it has a stronger economy right now. Other like, you know, there's also geopolitical factors of, you know, that have to do with America's military industrial complex that might cause other countries to start investing a lot more money in them.
100%. Thank you, comrade. And so it goes to show you, just like, let me take a look at the Luz's screen again. Luz, you might share your screen one more time, please. Yeah, that's what it was. So yeah, it's just like, because looking at the largest importers of major arms in the world, three of these are Muslim countries. One of these is a direct competitor of the U.S. in terms of being a superpower. Another one of these is a satellite colony of the United States, represent South Korea. And I guess there's a relationship to China to be analyzed in terms of why it might be interested in increasing its arms importation. But that's kind of like my best guess. Like, oh, okay, South Korea has close proximity to North Korea. North Korea and China have a workable, if rocky relationship. The U.S. is constantly interested in propping up regimes that can keep an eye on its behalf in the region, on nations like South Korea and Palestine. So that's why they fund nations like Israel and and why they colonized South Korea. So I guess in terms of the change that I would make to the video would just be kind of to the point that Emma was making, and thank you, Emma, for bringing it up. This idea that emphasizing the real world impact, like, hey, like, okay, we know where they are, we know who's sending them where, and we know who they're going. We know who's sending them, and we know where they're going to. But like, what are they doing there? Like, what conflicts are they arming? What are they being used for? This almost comes off as an attempt, like as some like kind of enlightened centrist attempt. This video to like kind of like for lack of like better, framing, like to just kind of wank the U.S. a little bit and talk about how fucking badass the U.S. is because it has all these big scary weapons and stuff. Because even at the end, like y'all were talking about, he wanted to go with this whole we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We're not saying anything otherwise. We're just saying these are the facts. Like, like centrists like to do. But we're not saying anything. We're just saying that, it is what it is. So that's what I would want to focus on. Real world impact. Comrade.
Yeah, because we also have, we know that this data is for the 2015 to 2019 period. We know that Saudi Arabia was importing mostly from the United States. We also know what started during that period was the attempted Saudi genocide of Yemen.
Is that when that started to escalate?
Yep, that's when it was escalating, was in the 2015-2019 period. Only recently ended. Alhamdulillah. But
Alhamdulillah. Everything's connected, though.
Everything's connected. It's all connected.
That's for certain. Okay, so one of the reasons that we wanted to go over this video with y'all is we wanted to give y'all a framework for how liberals are framing the conversation around the weapons manufacturing industry. One thing we want to pursue with y'all is taking this and using the synthesized research from the Genocide Journal and Trade Towards Freedom more broadly to make a better production eventually, than this, and put it out as the real introduction, both from an accessibility standpoint and an actually useful information. Because, there was some stuff in here that's good, but for the most part, it's just like watered down nonsense. Like, I'm not going to sit here and bash it. I'll give examples. Like, one of the things he tries to do is say, oh, the military industrial complex is just like, when nations like export weapons sometimes, and when like other nations import weapons sometimes, and like sometimes they have relationships with each other. And it's like, what is this? Sometimes we're doing it, sometimes we like not doing it, like nonsense that you got going on. Like, these are interconnected into all the global conflicts that are going on. These weapons are being used to fund genocide. Also, the materials that go into them have real sources that they come from, and the same nations that are buying these or that are importing and exporting these arms are the same nations that are stealing the resources that go into making these arms from the nations that they come from in the first place, such as Saudi oil, Iraqi oil, lithium in Bolivia, etc. So, and it's like I tell people all the time, if you want to know why the U.S. is talking shit about some country that you never heard of in the media recently, just take a look at the resources of that nation. But now you got to add take a look at what's going on with the weapons manufacturers in that industry, in that nation as well, and you'll probably be able to put a picture together of what's happening. So that's something that we want to do. I see that we had some commentary in the chat. Did you want to go ahead and verbally express your point, Luz? I know you never got the opportunity. You want to say anything to the question of what you would have changed?
Oh yeah,
mind you.
Yeah, that's why I answered in the chat, because I wasn't given time to give an answer. But essentially, I really agree with Mark and Emma's points and Camra's. And essentially, all I was saying is just I would try to update the video for today and use more realistic imagery. And also, let's give it the appropriate bias of anti-imperialism, as opposed to attempting this centrist neutrality that is just incorrect and not like dialectical or a materialist analysis at all. So just, I would change everything basically. I just make it a different video maybe. So
we'll keep data and we'll scrap your framework and we'll use the rest.
Yeah.
And just like how it was mentioned with like South Korea just being a friend and ally of the United States, without ever getting into the actual real dynamic between the United States and South Korea, that it is an occupied country, that they're not allowed to say no to the United States. So going in these relationships aren't, it's not just, oh, these are allies, so they trade weapons to each other. It's like, no, the United States strong arms them, and they sometimes even occupies them if they're not buying military weapons from America.
No, you muted yourself at a bit of an awkward moment there.
Oh, I just said, that was philosophy.
I got you. Okay, so that was a very productive conversation. Thanks, Sean. What we're gonna do is one-on-one. Comrade and I are going to reach out to the research team members who didn't get to make this meeting tonight, so that we can kind of get them to engage with this, and start thinking about how they would reframe it. And little by little, we're going to synthesize our research relevant to the weapons manufacturers and the military-industrial complex. And we're going to put out something that's just better than this, from describing military industrial complex, weapons manufacturing industries, the complicity directly, because this video does nothing to tell you what they're actually guilty of. It just tells you who's doing the shipping and who's doing the importing, but it doesn't really let you get into the weeds. That's hard. That hardly even qualifies as a basic introduction to the industry, to keep it on. This is really some watered down stuff, and I wanted to share it with y'all
and there was no analysis of the data, just data. Right.
And so I on that basis wanted to get y'all in the mindset of starting to think about what kind of changes you would make to promote an actual understanding of the the military industrial complex and the weapons manufacturers, and we'll edit that out. But we'll meet again next Sunday at 8 EST. That'll be our 5th meeting. We're planning on a workshop that teaches people how to build their own workshops, so that we can begin to get people, educating very similar to the style in the video, but for a wider and more interested audience and subjects around direct action, political education, organizing against weapons manufacturers, etc. So y'all have that to look forward to. Other than that, fantastic meeting. Thank y'all for being here. We'll see y'all at 8 on the dot next week, EST. And assalamu alaikum. Y'all take care.
Alaikum salam. Peace, comrades.
Alaikum salam.
Bye, comrades.